to an effective response to a type of virus that requires a comprehensive statewide approach. Without, we lose more people. In this ruling, the Supreme Court justices said, quote, "The governor's orders were and continue to be necessary to slow the spread of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of all Kentucky citizens. This type of highly contagious etiological hazard is precisely the type of emergency that requires a statewide response and properly serves as the basis for the governor's actions under KRS Chapter 39A. Because the law and equities favor the governor in this matter, it was an abuse of discretion for the trial court to issue the temporary injunction." Just want to remind everybody what was at stake here, and it's because of what was at stake, not because of who is in the lawsuit, that I am grateful to the Supreme Court for their decision, because I am. This lawsuit, the position of the Attorney General or the Agriculture Commissioner or whoever else, would have eliminated every single safeguard we have here in Kentucky to keep you safe. That could be the mask mandate that the Trump White House supports us in putting into place. It could be restrictions on even indoor arenas where we know super spreader events have taken countless of lives. It would have defunded our public schools that have to turn to virtual options when community spread gets too high. It would have left first responders without the workers' comp that they deserve when they have to quarantine because of their exposure to this virus. It would have resulted not just in difficulty, but in death had this challenge have ultimately been upheld. So we've seen over the past several weeks that COVID is spreading at an alarming rate. And the last thing that we ought to be doing is fighting with each other and trying to undo the steps that every public health official says are important to protect one another. We had 2,700 cases yesterday alone in Kentucky, and almost 300 Kentuckians are currently in the ICU. We've lost over 1,600 Kentuckians to COVID-19. I take that personally. Those are our friends and our neighbors. These are my people. And my job, and really all of our jobs right now, is to protect one another. This virus is everywhere in the Commonwealth, and we must all come together as Team Kentucky. No political games. The Supreme Court has said that the actions we're taking are constitutional, so now's the time. We know what the law is. It's clear. So let's all be supportive of the things that protect one another. I want to thank my legal team here. Our legal team in this case was led by my Chief of Staff, Latasha Buckner, who argued it in front of the state Supreme Court. Congratulations to her. This ruling gives us the chance and an opportunity to get this virus back under control. But that won't happen unless we open our eyes and our ears and our hearts. We realize the amount of suffering that is out there. And for all of us, we take some actions. For those that have been following the rules and fighting this fight every day, keep it up. The action I need you to take is to be resilient and to continue to be a good example to those around you. To those who have fought this thing hard but are tired and maybe slipping, we need you to step it back up. And we have seen how actions can impact other people and their health. This is now in every single community at an alarming rate. We need you to do whatever it takes to get your mental health and your strength back up to a place where you are ready to take on this virus side by side with us each and every day. And to those that haven't been following the guidelines and don't want to, I hope you have a change of heart. Whether it is faith, which tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves, whether it's values, or whether it's that you now know multiple people suffering from this thing. And so we can move beyond judgment at this point. We just need your help on this team. So if today is the first day that you put a mask on, welcome. We want to support you. We want to beat this thing together. And that's the only way that we can defeat it. Politics has no place in something like this because the virus doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It just doesn't care. What it does care about is, can it harm you? Can it move through you to reach somebody whose body can't take it? This is a test of our humanity, about how good that we can be. And yes, about whether we're willing to sacrifice. And as the Supreme Court said today, no one's sacrificing any constitutional rights. These steps are legal and fully constitutional, but you are sacrificing a lot of your everyday lives. And many of you, you're sacrificing a business, you're sacrificing the stability that you previously had, that your life is changing, turned upside down. And that's a lot of sacrifice. But we need you, because when we're through all this, we're going to look back on it, and it's probably going to be one of the main things that we remember in our lifetime. What did we do the right things? Did we fight for other people around us? Did we put our neighbor ahead of ourselves? This decision gives us an opportunity to do that. And while I said this is a win for all the people of the Commonwealth, I want to say that I don't really care if this is a win for me or a loss for somebody else. Managing this virus is probably the most important thing. Our response to this virus, managing our response to this virus is probably the most important thing I will ever ask to do in my professional life. And this says that we have the tools to try to do it. So grateful for this decision, but what's to come is so important. This gives us the opportunity to do what needs to be done. And we're seeing other states around us, Ohio and Indiana, now putting in some of the same restrictions that we have that were challenged under this order. So a good decision today for the people of Kentucky. Want to now turn. I want to mention one other statement that the Supreme Court made, because I think it's important. And it's that a legislature that is not in continuous session and without constitutional authority to convene itself cannot realistically manage a crisis on a day-to-day basis by adoption and amendment of laws. Now, I understand that there are legislators that think that I don't call them enough or inform them enough, and we can work on that. But something like this and on this scale does take the ability of a strong executive branch to have the right type of response. I think the Supreme Court recognized that, and we shouldn't in the future do things that are going to prevent us, if and when we face something like this again, from saving lives of those around us. All right, want to give a quick update on the Brent Spence Bridge. As you all know, an accident at 2:45 a.m. on Wednesday, November 11th, where a commercial motor vehicle jackknifed on the lower deck of the two-deck Brent Spence Bridge and was struck by a second commercial motor vehicle carrying potassium hydroxide, caused an intense fire, which has caused visible damage to the steel of the bridge and the concrete deck. It required the closure of the bridge yesterday. That closure remains in effect. Had to do a couple things. First, had to put the fire out. Second, the temperature of the bridge had to decrease over time for it to be safe for inspectors to go on it. That happened, mid to late yesterday afternoon. The piece after that was required is removal of debris, which has now been completed enough for the inspections to commence. So inspectors have begun an in-depth inspection of the bridge elements to determine its structural damage. In addition to its own bridge inspection staff, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet is partnering with 4 top consulting engineering firms: Michael Baker International, Burgess, Stantec, and Palmer Engineering. Each firm has experts in steel connections. A material scientist has also been retained to help determine the effect the extreme heat of the fire had on the composition of this steel bridge. For the in-depth inspection, engineers will use climbing techniques to reach all damaged areas of the bridge. But the opportunity for inspectors to use heavy equipment, such as a snooper bucket truck, is considered unlikely at this point. The detailed inspection project will take several days. So again, we ought to expect this closure and this disruption for at least several days. The examination is going to include the concrete deck to ensure it can safely carry loads, structural members, safety elements to ensure they're aligned and functioning as intended. Materials testing will be required to determine the extent of damage caused by the intent heat, which will include taking the concrete core samples to test the integrity of the deck and working with the metallurgist to test the composition of the steel truss. Once the inspection and materials testing are completed, KYTC can determine necessary repairs and create and implement an action plan. Yesterday, I also signed the emergency declaration, which is allowing us to seek federal emergency funding assistance for the inspection and repairs. I talked to Secretary Elaine Chao, who pledged her support yesterday. We greatly appreciate that, and her office is working very closely with us and Ohio. But let me again stress, we know how important this bridge is to the region, but also to the commerce of our nation. And our commitment is to get it open as quickly as we can. But we will only do that if it is safe to cross that bridge. I'm not going to open it. KYTC is not going to open it until I would drive my family across it. That's my commitment to everybody else's safety. And the other piece is, this is 2020. More disruption in our lives. People need to have a plan. Employers need to have a plan. Be proactive, change your hours. With the level of COVID announced yesterday in Northern Kentucky, work from home. But be prepared for this additional disruption as we go about our lives. We are going to have a virtual update press conference at 2:30 today to provide additional details of anything that we have learned between now and then. So with that, we have a number of reporters, a ton of them, on the line. We'll go through and make sure everybody gets to ask questions. So we will start with Morgan Watkins from the Courier-Journal.
Hi, Morgan Watkins with the Courier-Journal here. As cases skyrocket in Kentucky, do you plan to issue more orders and rules to combat the virus now that the state Supreme Court has upheld your authority to do that?
Thank you, Morgan. We have not been waiting on a decision to put anything in place or not to. What we've been waiting on is determining the effectiveness of the red zone reduction recommendations, and also looking at new enforcement techniques. We've seen a couple things the last couple days on the enforcement side. We've seen the city of Louisville come forward to step up its enforcement. We think that's going to be helpful. And we have another municipality that's reached out that I'm talking to a little later today about how they can use their code inspectors and others. Right now, compliance is our major issue. And there are two ways to increase compliance. One is enforcement and the other is encouragement. And we need to be doing both right now. I do plan on going over tonight how, we always look at the numbers and we think we need more of something. We already have a lot in place, and thanks to this order, it stays in place. When we look at what Indiana and Ohio are doing with restrictions on numbers of capacity in various places, they're coming closer to what we're doing. When we look at their new restrictions on gathering, they're coming closer to what we're doing. We are more aggressive in each and every one of those. But again, we have right now a limitation of 10 people on gatherings, and we're telling people in red counties, no gatherings at all. Yet we still see Halloween parties and Breeders' Cup parties. We need people to do better than that, but we also need to enforce it better. Olivia Russell from WKYT.
Hi, Olivia Russell with WKYT. Now, I know the court pointed to KRS 39A, and the Attorney General said in a statement that the executive power could be questioned in the upcoming legislative session. Are you concerned about the future of the governor's power, even despite this ruling that allows you to do it for now?
Well, we believe this ruling, if you look at it, talks about both the constitutional powers of a governor as well as those that are in statute. If you read through it, it will say that the governor responding to an emergency doesn't violate the separation of powers at all because it is an executive function. So if it's an executive function, there are parts of it that can't be taken away because a legislature can't take the powers of a governor and a governor can't take the powers of a legislature. But remember, legislature can't call itself into session, which would mean if they tried to remove those powers, there'd be nothing that could be done for a period of time. And then we all know that responding to this emergency, which the Supreme Court recognized takes a comprehensive statewide approach, it can't be done by two chambers trying to hammer it out. There's lots of good work a legislature can do, but none of it is fast. The system is set up, in fact, to slow it down. So my hope is we get through this presidential election. Now that this decision is out, everybody take a breath, right? Decisions I'm having to make, some are popular, some are really unpopular. None of them are helping any political party here or there. We're just trying to save lives of those around us. And we're going to continue to fight to ensure that we can do that. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, we've at least have good news if it holds with the Pfizer vaccine, that there could be a significant amount out there, certainly by the end of March, that there is light at the end of the tunnel at maybe 90% effective. And the thought that the legislature would come in January and say, well, we're doing better than most states and all we got to do is make it to March, but let's stop doing these things. That'll put a lot of people's lives at risk. And I don't expect that they'll do that. It's not the responsible thing. Mark Vanderhoff with WLKY News.
Governor, are there any powers under 39A, any statutory powers that you have that the legislature absolutely must keep intact in order for you to continue effectively fighting the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I think the legislature should leave them all intact. We'll have to look through different pieces, but this is why this statute is here. And every other governor across the country, with maybe 3 or 4 examples, is taking the same steps. If the mask mandate somehow falls under 39A instead of the Constitution, and that'd be something that would have to be determined. Think about how many lives that we could lose if even just the portion of the population that's wearing them now stopped wearing them, and we congregated people without wearing them. So, this concept that we're going to fight in the legislative session over this, let's just get through COVID. Let's get through COVID, and then anybody can look at it. We'll have a conversation on it. Now, the last thing I want to do is to keep an emergency for COVID in place when it is not needed. I want to get out of this thing as much as anybody else and get back to being focused day to day on affordable, accessible health care, on improving public education, on ensuring the solidity of the retirements of so many of our public workers and creating good jobs. Ralph Davis, News Director for Mountaintop Media.
Yes, Governor, this is Ralph Davis. Just a clarification. Considering the surge that is going on right now, do you anticipate that some of these red zone recommendations could become mandates?
Ralph, we're not there yet, and I don't have specific plans on it. We'll need to see, first of all, how well they work, and we believe that they will work, but also how well they're followed. Again, if a community embraces these, then we believe that they will be really effective. But I'm not sure you get embracing from a mandate as opposed to encouragement and with what's in place in enforcement. And across the country, we're only seeing a few new mandates out there. If we looked at certain areas of it, one could be talking with local governments, which I think have been really responsive about what they can do virtually or not doing, and maybe talking about certain large gatherings, festivals, or others, which just shouldn't be happening right now. I would point people to the newest White House recommendations for Kentucky. They are on kycovid19.ky.gov. They support in our red counties, no gatherings at all, just you and your household. They support the restaurant and bar restrictions. They support the mask mandate, and they support our overall approach on the red zone recommendations. So again, we try to cloud this with politics, but you got the Trump administration and you got the Beshear administration here that agree on the basic public health steps that we need to take. And you see that on the local level too. Let me say that. We see county judges, mayors, health departments, and others without regard to party or to politics in just about every place doing the right thing. We see a lot of really good work in Eastern Kentucky, particularly. Jack Bramer from the Herald Leader.
Hi, Governor. My questions have been asked, but I would like to follow up on your relationship with the legislature. Do you think you could do better in working with the legislature? Are you going to try to do that?
Listen, I can always do better in various things. I don't think there's anything that I do that I couldn't be better at, and so we'll continue to try to find inroads. What I look for is a relationship that is mutual, where there can be give and take, just not take and take. So I hope that there's an opportunity to build some of those bridges. But let me say, Jack, that I think I've proven that I can work in a bipartisan way, but it takes two, of course, to do that. We worked with our Republican Secretary of State to create an elections plan that was, I think, the envy of the nation. I work daily in a very positive way with the Trump administration. I work weekly with Ohio and Indiana, who have Republican governors. We work in concert with Democrat and Republican county judges. And the amount of interaction we've had has depended on who actually does the work. I mean, there's a reason that I've talked more to county judges who are implementing these procedures on the local level than the legislature, which wasn't in session and wasn't going to come back in. And we've just tried to prioritize the direct relationships that are most important to saving lives on the ground right now. And those are our local health departments, our county judges, and our mayors, who are all doing great work. But I hope if I'm ever asked if I can do better on something, my answer will always be yes. Alex Ebert from Bloomberg.
Thank you, Governor. We've seen hospital systems in Ohio and in Michigan say that they're considering stopping elective procedures because there are so many infections and quarantines of hospital personnel. What are the hospital systems in Kentucky telling you, and what do your health experts say about elective procedures possibly being put on hold in the coming days or weeks?
Our hospital systems are concerned, and where they need to, they are taking action. And not all elective procedures are the same. Some are really necessary, and some can potentially be postponed. We have seen in different pockets at different times hospital systems lessen, not fully pause, some elective procedures. And I think we have at least one hospital system that is doing that right now. They've been really responsible. I will say they've been really responsible without having to have any edict from the governor's office or from the state in doing this right. And they have been amazing partners throughout this pandemic. It is a real concern. And our concern is as much on the staffing side as it is on the bedside. But staffing elective procedures is also intensive. So right now, we certainly don't have any plans out of the governor's office to make any directive on that, because we are seeing all the right moves by our hospital partners. But it's real. The number of people hospitalized, the number of people needing care continues to increase, because it's a basic math equation. There are folks that want to argue, well, more people have this, so the percentage of people hospitalized is lower, or the percentage of people that reach the ICU is lower, or the percentage of people who die is lower. Well, if the overall number of cases keeps growing and is huge, then you have more people, no matter what that percentage is, going all the way down. And you just look at our fatalities now, and you know how serious this is. Next question is from Joe Ragusa with Spectrum News.
Hey, Governor. So I want to talk again, or go back to the legislature's plans regarding KRS 39A. I mean, they're going to revise it in some form or fashion when they meet in January, or when they meet in the next session. Given your comments earlier about the separation of powers as it relates to this court case and your orders in general, do you feel like there might be another court fight on the horizon regarding this when and if they do pass changes to 39A?
Well, I think it's really premature that we've got 2,700 cases yesterday. Lord, I hope we don't have 3,000 or 4,000 cases a day by the time they get to session. But there's a lot of time for people to recognize the severity of what is already a severe pandemic and what's going on right now. I certainly do believe that there is language in this opinion suggesting the court believes at least some emergency powers are constitutionally housed in the executive branch, and how else would you do it? We'll see what they put out there, but this would be the types of powers that I would support, regardless of who the governor would be. And there are just some things that only the legislature should be able to do, and there are some things that only the executive branch can do effectively. Now, we see some legislators saying they should get to approve certain contracts. Well, that's an executive function. My hope is that we all focus on the things that we do the best, and the legislature is going to have an opportunity to do a lot of things when it comes in. First, it's got to pass a budget, and it can't take its eye off that. And legislative leaders are, I think, communicating with us, and we are communicating with them very well on the budget. We have agreed to submit it earlier. There's going to be an opportunity here to modernize state government. We've learned so much through COVID about things that we can do more efficiently with better customer service at a lower cost. And then there are different things that we've got to take a strong look at this session. Our transportation cabinet budget. Medical marijuana, the time has come, and you see other states moving way beyond us. Our horse industry with HHR needs our help, tens of thousands of jobs depending on it. And it's time for the revenue that gaming would provide us, and a number of other critical areas out there. Depending on what happens in the ACA lawsuit, we need some protections in state law for our people. So there's going to be in a short session, a ton of really critical issues for the legislature. Tom Latek, Kentucky Today. It wouldn't be a normal day without me taking a question from Tom Latek.
Thank you, Governor. Given that the decision was unanimous, even though the other side in the case does have, I believe, 20 days to seek a reconsideration or some other thing, do you feel that would be an exercise in futility?
I think 7-0 tells you something. Karen Czar from WUKY.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, can you talk a little bit more about the job done by LaTosha Buckner and the rest of the legal team in presenting this case?
I absolutely can do that. We have a great legal team. LaTosha Buckner was head of my civil division in the AG's office. And you know what? She's here. Let's let her talk a little bit about the decision today as she shakes her head at me and tells me she doesn't want to. But a great job. I thought clearly articulated, our position, articulated the importance of it, talked in depth about both statutory and constitutional law. And I know what she'll tell you, she's supported by a really great legal group. These are lawyers that could make more money just about anywhere else, but they do this because they believe in this Commonwealth, and we appreciate all their efforts.
Hi. So yes, he's exactly right. I argued it, but it was the work and hard work and research and writing of my legal team, Travis Mayo, Taylor Payne, Mark Ferris, Laura Tipton, Wes Duke, Sam Flynn, and I think I hit everybody. Not, I'm sorry. I think today's one is super important for the safety of Kentuckians, and that's how we view it. We are very relieved that the Supreme Court understood the magnitude of what was before them and understood that everything we did had been laid out by the General Assembly. And we're thrilled that we continue to be able to protect the citizens. Thank you.
All right, Tana Weingartner from WVXU-FM, Northern Kentucky.
Hi, Governor. Thank you. Tana Weingartner, WVXU. So 2 questions really quickly. I'm switching to the Brent Spence Bridge, obviously. Realistically, how long will it take to get these concrete and steel results, and some reports from your inspectors? And then secondarily, could you just clarify when exactly the inspectors got on the bridge? I was unclear if you meant they got on there late yesterday or this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, the inspectors got on there this morning. This morning, we were still working in the early part of the morning on removing debris, but the inspectors are now on site. Jim Gray, my cabinet secretary, is on site with them. This is an all hands on deck. 2:30, we ought to have a better update on the timetables. We may have some initial reports, but we ought to expect that the details are going to take at least a couple days. And some that require tests will get a timetable for you. But right now, just for the inspection piece, we expect this to take at least a couple days because we want to do it right and because of the number of issues that a crash and a fire like this could create. We got to make sure that it's safe. Okay, Lawrence Smith from WDRB. Lawrence, did we lose you? All right, Cameron Knight from the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Hi, Governor. My question is also concerning the bridge. It's been a sort of political hot potato recently. Well, not recently, for years. There's been promises from Obama, promises from Trump. Do you feel like had those promises been followed through with, if this crash would have occurred? And also, is this going to be the tipping point to finally get the additional bridge built, the expansion done?
Well, I think that the push that's been there for a number of years on the Brent Spence Bridge project, a lot of that is about traffic flow. I believe that this type of crash on any bridge would have been severely problematic. If it was on a brand new bridge, we would be dealing with the same thing. Now, questions about could a new bridge that these trucks were traveling on have potentially been safer is something we'll have to look at moving forward. But I hope this creates an additional impetus for the community. Because we focus a lot on the politics, but the communities on both sides of the bridge have to come together for us to have a path forward. We saw, for instance, in Louisville that took about a decade, and I know that's about how long Northern Kentucky has been talking about it to finally, reach the conclusion on how they were going to move forward. But I believe that as much as the crash itself is bad, the disruption that we are going to see from this and that Northern Kentucky is already feeling ought to make us all take a look and say, what more is everybody willing to sacrifice or to change or to reconsider to get the project up and moving forward. It's certainly something that I want to be a part of, and I will do my part to try to help move it forward. Christian Hauser from Local 12 News.
Hey, sir, if it's all right, I have two questions for you. Kind of the first one piggybacking off that, semi trucks in that area have been a problem for years. We actually have a curb just south of there that they just had to completely replace the median on because of semi speeding and crashing and whatnot. Would you like to see the Transportation Cabinet investigate whether or not they could create a truck route going 275 to 471 to avoid this corridor and that steep stretch in particular to alleviate some of the truck issues? And then my second question, you already touched on it a little bit with the legislature. They have so many other priorities that they need to be focused on. We know how politics works, though. Do you worry that they will spend too much time trying to limit your power? Thank you.
Thank you. On the first question, I think that this accident and others that you're talking about show that we should take a look at alternative routes. And anytime you have something like this, we ought to learn something from it. Anytime we have a problem that arises throughout the Commonwealth, we ought to learn something from it. And whether that is all trucks, whether that's trucks carrying materials like one of these was, I think that our Transportation Cabinet should and will take a look at that, looking at the entire region and the impacts that any of those decisions would have. On the, am I worried about the legislature will look at this? I've learned, I guess, through this first year of my governorship that worrying doesn't help a lot. If people are going to do something, you can try to talk to them about it, but they're going to do it. And worrying doesn't get us anywhere. It's kind of like talking about our mental health during COVID-19 is understanding that there are some things we can control and some that we cannot. Again, my hope is that people want to do the responsible thing for the Commonwealth and not for anybody's political party. I think I've shown that with making decisions that are tough, that no one would ever want to make, that no one whose job depends on votes and in some part popularity would ever want to make. But it's the right thing to do. So my commitment is, no matter what happens when the legislature comes back into session, I'm going to keep doing the right thing, and I'll try to work with anybody who's willing to do that. But we can't be pushed out of doing the right thing when people's lives are truly on the line. So I hope cooler heads prevail. Let's do remember, and I'm sure we'll see different quotes today from different places, that we are in the midst of this really highly charged moment in our country. And we're going to have to move beyond the highly charged moment, because that it can also cause other harms and stir some dangerous factions up that are out there. So certainly by January, when the legislature comes back into session, I hope we're beyond this moment that we've been in, at least the last several months in this country. Okay, we appreciate everybody's time. Again, relieved and grateful to the Supreme Court, not for a win, but for the safety and security of all of our families that are out there. We're going to make it through this pandemic. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but to do it, we got to do it together. Thank you all very much.